Welcome to another episode of the Apex Perspective podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of sitting down with Marcus Yoder, who is a seasoned sales and marketing executive. He's also an advisory board member, and he is also someone I'm quite interested in interviewing today. Marcus, let's get started with more about your background and how it led you to what you're primarily focused on today.
Sure. So I've been in technology for the past 30 years and literally had my start back in the day when we had acoustic couplers to connect to the internet. And I was charged with traveling around the world training bench chemists on how to use CompuServe, dial-up CompuServe, to exchange formulas and ideas with their colleagues around the world. I was working for a company that had 17 different country companies around the world. So I got to travel the world, use the internet at its very earliest. And then had the good fortune to go to the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. It wasn't called that back then, but that's what it is now. And that just broadened my horizon. Just fantastic experience. I was, they used to say a poet, meaning I was a Bachelor of Arts that went to this high-powered business school. And so rapidly had to catch up with my colleagues. Came out, and usually coming out of Chicago, you go to investment banking or consulting. I got a D in finance, so I wasn't going to go that direction. I went consulting and really got into, was exposed to the world of consulting plus software plus hardware in these massive $5 million projects. And then realized that, the software side looked a lot more interesting and never looked back. And so I've always been in partner development, sales, marketing, new product and new market entry is part of my specialty. And I've gone from enterprise software to a social mobile startup to all of a sudden now for the past 16 years, I've been in gambling, which if you told me 17 years ago, that's what I'd be doing, I think you're crazy. But it's been a great ride. And, along the way, I've learned certain skills that I've been able to help startup technology companies from an advisory board perspective, and then now on the board of directors of a nonprofit that we've grown asymptotically in terms of the constituents that we serve.
And you were also founder at one point, and this was a little bit earlier in your career, I assume. Tell me more about that and more about what the company was.
Yeah, so the company was called Veeker, which meant a Veek was a video peek that you would take on your phone. And I'm doing it like this because we were dealing with flip phones, right? This is 2005, 1.3 megapixel cameras. There was just the movement from MySpace to YouTube, right? YouTube was this kind of new thing. And co-founders and I were working with a company that had some technology that they're like, mobile video, that's crazy. Nobody's ever going to do anything with that, right? I was like, we'll take it. And so we created the company, raised $3.5 million, bought a wholly foreign-owned entity in China to get 17, programmers. Ended up doing citizen journalism for NBC. We launched Spider-Man 3. We had 17 shows on MTV, Sony, BMG, and it was growing and it was going. And John Doerr was once asked, what's the difference between the companies that made it and didn't? And his answer was cash. And we frankly just ran out of cash, and so had to shutter that. But I learned so much in that process, and one of the co-founders, and I was the last guy who locked the door, and I think I still have the servers, blades in my cabinet.
Wow.
But it was a fantastic experience. Too early. Basically, it was Vine in 2005 on 1.5 megapixel flip phone cameras, right? So too early.
Well, what compelled you to start the company in the first place? What did you see in your mind?
Always wanted to do it. And when we were at the company, my co-founders and I, we put forward this thesis and we believed it. We really believed it. And so when the technology basically became available for free, we thought, okay, we can take this, and with the creativity, and I'm the business and sales guy, and we've got a lead programmer, and then we hired 17 people, actually more. We really believed it, and when we showed it to people, they got it immediately. which like now you think, video on your phone, transposing that and putting it on the web or anywhere you want to put it, no brainer, right? But it
That's
wasn't
ahead of the curve.
Yeah, way ahead.
Okay.
So, but we had a great time.
Yeah. So right now, I was really interested. You said you specialize in market entry for new products.
Mm-hmm.
How does that differ across other different products that have already been introduced to the market in terms of a sales and marketing perspective?
Yeah. So I always go back and either I'm working for a client or for the company that I'm an employee of, if that is my responsibility, to say, okay, what do we have? What do we have right now that works, that's really good? And then where could we take that next? It might be an adjacent geography, an adjacent industry, an adjacent piece of functionality.
Mm-hmm.
And I just happen to have a knack for being able to identify that.
Okay.
And then, then it's basically turning to the company or your advisee to say, okay, let's rally the troops around going after this. Here's the market opportunity. It's very important to be able to size the total available market and then be very, very realistic about what you as a new entrant into that market could get or create the market. And as long as you're very sober around that prediction and projection, then usually people will say, okay, this feels like a risk that is calculated and it's worth it, and I also always build in some kind of exit, right? I adhere to the philosophy of fail fast, so you don't burn up people's time, money, energy, and ideas. And, so being able to say, okay, we're going to enter the market. And if we go like this, great. If we at least get to here, let's keep going. But if we don't get to here by this date, then we're done. And let's all agree that we're going to close it then. And then that usually gives people the sense of, okay, there is some thought behind this. And if we get into trouble and it looks like it's not going to work, we all agree that it's not necessarily failing. We're just choosing to not do that anymore.
Okay. And how do you spot market opportunity or validate it?
A lot of times you have to be in the market to see it. After 30 years, I now, having looked at enterprise software, social software, mobile video, games, gaming, I have seen a smattering of things, and being able to look at different industries and say, you know what, this really worked over in this industry, and it looks like the similar problem over here, but nobody's addressing it. So why don't we take the thing that worked over here, modify it, and go after that? Sometimes it's dumb luck. You just happen to know a guy who has a new idea and he or she does not know how to actually commercialize it. I know how to commercialize it. And so, I'm not necessarily the idea guy, but I can recognize an idea and say, aha, that actually has commercial application over here in this industry.
Interesting. And what you mentioned before is that you said there's potentially a product that might work in a certain market, but it has potentially not been applied to a different industry. How do you recognize that potentially a viable product in a different industry? What is your process to make sure that's doable?
There certainly is the need for speaking to other experts already in both of those industries, right, to be able to test the hypothesis.
Okay.
So being able to be open and reach out to either your contacts or your contacts to say, hey, would you mind, chatting with me about this idea, 15 minutes, let me see what you have to say. And they may say, no, you're crazy. We don't, A, that's not a problem, or B, that would never work because of Y. And then you either have to agree that the Y is valid or not, right? They may not be able to move beyond Y, but you might be able to. I am working with a company right now who has dealt with basically changing patient behavior in terms of showing up to their appointments and staying on their medicine and so forth. And my friend did a fantastic job in that, sold his company, made a bunch of money, but he still knows how to change people's behavior. And I know that also in the casino industry, that oftentimes, what's very important is getting that return trip and maybe a little more spend, not always, but a little more spend on each trip. All that is changing that person's behavior. And so we're able now to take all that he learned over here in the healthcare sector, kind of, pull out different pieces of it, and now we're applying it to, the casino, gambling, sports betting sector. And it's a startup, but I think it's going to go.
Right. So you recognize truths and you recognize specific principles that are actually true across various industries, and you can apply that to a different sector, essentially. That's
a lot of times,
understanding here. And when it comes to specific market entries specifically, what would you say, from in your eyes, is the difference between a complete risk and a calculated risk?
Oh, well, I think a complete risk, especially if you're looking at from the perspective of investors into a company, if you the founders, if they don't have the experience in the target industry and don't have experience in the target technology, that's the wrong team to back. Sure. And so that to me is complete risk. Yeah. But if you're working on a new AI-based IT servicing function, and you see that the two co-founders used to work for this monster IT service company. They've seen the problems, they've seen the issues with trying to fix the problems, and now with AI they're able to actually go fix it, and not add a lot of money, or in terms of total investment, not with a huge team, leveraging it. And so that to me is a calculated risk.
Got you. So now you do a lot of independent consulting. I'm curious, what kind of specific companies you specifically work with? What is their profile typically?
Right now, it's all inside of casino gaming, gambling, online gambling, sports betting. There are, some ancillary products as well around that. So, for instance, inside the online casino world, it takes an ecosystem to actually have that function. So there are other companies that provide know your customer, which is, identify, like, here's my ID, face scan. How does that work to prove that you are who you say you are and you're of age based on your identification, geolocation. Am I actually inside of Colorado where online sports gambling is legal? Payment processing, payment gateways. That's a fantastically lucrative industry where a lot of people, especially coming in from the crypto side, are trying to disrupt it. And so frankly, I consult with the existing infrastructure guys as well as the crypto guys, because I can see it from both sides. Obviously, I never work if there is a conflict of interest, but that's mostly what I'm working with right now.
What was the reason you wanted to choose specifically sports betting and this industry particularly?
Meaning how I got started in it?
Yeah, how did you get started in it, and why did you continue in it?
Yeah, so I got started in because that social mobile startup called Veeker, one of our board members became the CEO of one of the massive slot machine manufacturers in the United States globally. And my co-founder went in to help that person figure out how to create an interactive division. And then when that was created, I was brought in to basically create a sales and marketing function for that. And, I was like, I have no idea what I'm walking into here. And about 6 weeks in, a gentleman named Knutson walks into my office. He was about 5'5", glasses, hair, wavy blonde hair. And he says, "You're coming with me. I'm going to show you what tribal gaming is about across the United States." I was like, okay. And so for like 2 weeks, we did a road trip. And along the way, he said, "You'll either quit in about a year or you'll retire here. You'll finish." And the industry hit with me. As I mentioned, I do a lot of work with tribal operators and tribal business. That's a special place for me where I like to focus. At the end of the day, it's a fun industry, right? It's not brain surgery. Obviously, it's important that we provide, good technology sales service, especially for the public companies, and then also for technologies or service providers that serve the tribes, because frankly, that's revenue for their people. At the end of the day, it's still fun. My wife is an interior designer, so we always joke that she makes things pretty and I make things fun.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and move this conversation to a little bit more about yourself, Marcus.
Sure.
And the first question I have for you is, can you tell me more about Brighter Children, which is where you're board of director, where you're at that position of the board of
Yeah.
directors?
Yeah. So I entered into nonprofit work not necessarily from a philanthropic approach. I wanted to learn how to become a board member. And in the process, I came across Brighter Children and had a discussion with the founder. And the purpose really spoke to me. And the purpose is basically to educate, globally close to 300 million children who just will not get an education because of where they live, right? Their zip code, their country code. And so we find what we call educational entrepreneurs, meaning a director of a school program who has been able to establish the program outside of the public system in a developing area around the world. It just so happens now that these are all outside of the United States. That's not part of our charter. It could be wherever. But, we're able to fund a student for about $420, $410. And that will be 10 months of education, usually 2 uniforms, t-shirt and shorts, and two meals a day for 10 months. So we sponsor schools in Kenya, Guatemala, India, Colombia, Honduras, and then we're adding schools. And we function almost like a venture capital or seed round, where the organization is not big enough to go to the Bezos fund to get funding, but we can fund them for $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 to get them up to the point where they can get funding from the Bezos fund. And then we exit and say, you guys are on your own, you're good to go. And we take that money and go find the next school and establish that. And it's just been very, very satisfying. We've grown tremendously over the past 7 years. And it's
what
been
did it take? And if I can ask, what did it take to grow the organization?
Spreading the word is a big part of it, and bringing on other like-minded individuals to our associate board, which is individuals that are, let's say, 5 years out of college to 5 years in their career, 10 years in their career, to our advisory board, which is usually a little bit more advanced in their career, to our board of directors. And I joined as the advisory board member and created a corporate development group. Did that for a while, and then was elected to the board of directors, and then finally elected vice chairman of the board. And when I say like-minded, usually there was something in their lives where education turned their life for them. And that's what happened to me. I was growing up in Memphis, Tennessee. I was going to a public school system there. It was okay. But, for instance, a lot of the people that I ran with back then didn't do so well, and I was given the opportunity to attend a school called Deerfield Academy in Massachusetts, and was able to get 100% full ride. My mom was a teacher. My dad was a preacher. And so I got a full ride to this, wonderful school, and that changed my life. And so when this opportunity came back around, I thought, okay, this is perfect. I want to go change these kids' lives by being able to provide these scholarships for them to move forward.
Love it. Marcus, what is something about your life that you wish more people knew about?
Maybe Brighter Children, although I'm pretty prolific about it on LinkedIn. I don't know. I guess at the end of the day, and I wrote this in an article recently, I'm pretty much a softie. Like I'll come across as, in certain deals and dealings, I can, definitely turn, not necessarily aggression, but, the driving force to get a deal done. But at the end of the day, I'm a softie. And I guess the other thing is that I actually have sung in 5 different a cappella groups as a bass.
Wow, that's interesting. How were you like in your 20s or in your college years? What kind of person were you?
Definitely outgoing.
Okay.
I went to University of Tennessee for undergrad, and joined a fraternity and became the president of the fraternity after 3 years, and was captain of the lacrosse team. It was club lacrosse, and I like being around people. I like being able to help people. I'll have a good time just like the rest of us. But also then when it gets when it comes down to business, I get very serious. So at
Yeah.
4.0 through undergrad, not at Chicago, that was really hard. But I was, known to, Sunday night through Thursday night, I was in the library, and then Friday and Saturday night, I was in a bar called the library. So there's if you want to, the cliche is work hard, play hard, but that's
Certainly
kind of how it went.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate the perspective you shared today, especially about market entry. I think that was really interesting is you recognize core truths about how there are certain market reactions in one industry, and you recognize the truths of that, and potentially the idea of applying that to a different industry. I think that was a really important.
Yeah, it's a good term. Really good way to describe it. Core truths.
I really love those perspectives you provided. So what I want to do now is share a quick perspective regarding fitness and health, and then we'll go ahead and conclude the podcast with the plans that you have for this year or the coming year, whichever one you want to include.
Yeah, sounds good.
So the perspective I really want to share today is really about simplifying and making fitness as time efficient as possible. Now, a lot of the issues that I see is that a lot of traditionally what people do is go to a gym and depend on driving to a location and exercising. And for someone who's stuck in the office or traveling constantly, that isn't as doable. And on those days that it's not doable, you're costing yourself progress, or perhaps your life is so hectic that it doesn't actually end up coming to fruition. So how can you really restructure to make it as time efficient as possible and as, let's just say, as doable, right? So you have to identify the requirements. So that's the first step. You have to understand the requirements. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to do what's required. So there's really two primary ones. And this you can get from PubMed, and this is the National Institute of Health. It's one, you have to get the right amount of movement, and second, you have to have the right calorie intake. And what this creates is a negative energy balance and allows you to be in an energy imbalance, allowing you to basically lose fat and lose weight essentially. So if we look at both of those requirements, which is the movement and the diet itself, the nutrition, what takes the time is actually the movement. So how can you really restructure that? You have to prioritize movement that is location independent as opposed to location dependent. For example, like step count, because step count is something you can do while you're listening to this podcast. It's something you can do while you're potentially traveling. As long as there's ground underneath you, you have the capacity to do step count. And that is the primary perspective I want to share, is identifying the requirements and restructuring how you achieve those requirements in the most simple and effective way possible. And step count is actually what I use myself to lose over 70 pounds and actually keep it off. So
Amazing.
That's the main perspective I want to share, is that if you feel it's not actually possible, you have to really look at the requirements and look at the options in front of you and how to achieve the requirements. And that can really open up new pathways to make it happen. So hopefully that was valuable to the viewers today. What we'll do now is go ahead and shift the podcast over to Marcus's next year plans.
Yeah. So right now I've got two major, let's call them clients that I'm working for, and they're both in the industry and gambling. One is a bit of a heart project. It's really focused on a class 2 mobile gaming solution, and that a lot of terminology that I threw at you, but suffice it to say, it is another way that tribal operators can provide additional forms of gaming on their property and not have to pay any form of royalty. They can't call it tax because it's sovereign nation to sovereign nation to the state in which they operate. That's already written into law under something called the Indian Gaming Regulation Act. And I'm working with my client to figure out if we can bring a very, very low cost solution to do that. On the other side, looking at an opportunity inside an investment bank that, again, is focused on solely focused on the gaming industry. I would be the iGaming guy to come in and do that. Third of all is continuing to grow Brighter Children. We have a goal. We currently have 5 schools, and I want to get to adding 8 schools by the end of the calendar year, which is aggressive because we do a lot of due diligence around the schools, and we have to raise a lot of money. So we're holding a big gala in New York, April 24th, and we're hoping to raise about $300,000. So if you're in New York, love to have you. But yeah, those are the 3 things I'm focusing on, and obviously family life and my own fitness as well.
Sure. And where do people learn more about you, Marcus, and more about the work you're doing?
LinkedIn is my platform, right? So it's I was lucky enough. I joined LinkedIn right when it started. So my URL is linkedin.com/Marcus Yoder. Right.
I love that. Awesome. Well, Marcus, it's a pleasure to have you on and really sharing those unique perspectives you bring to the table here today on the podcast. So I really appreciate your time today. This was Aryan Mohindra and Marcus